Dickens. What was Dickens' comedy like? A la Shmoop.
At the time when he was writing, insulting or making fun of Americans was extremely popular in Britain, and it was a really easy way to sell novels and to get people to read because it was funny. And people really thought about Americans, maybe even rightly so to a certain extent, because we have to realize it was still very much a pioneer nation and only stretched about as far as the Mississippi. So you definitely had uneducated people and people who were living in, backwater hamlets. So it was very fun for the British and funny to make fun of Americans. The Americans didn't see it that way. The Americans hated what Dickens said about them. In the nonfiction, the characters were obvious who he was talking about, but even thinly veiled in the novel versions of what he said about Americans. And some of them, he went so far as to talk about the President of the United States. He would talk about new women, about how American women were so mouthy and so forward in America because of the political system. And talking about politicians and how corrupt they were because of all the money they were taking and the lobbyists and so forth. All of that was very thinly veiled, and he just got smashed by critics. They hated him for it, and I just didn't want to have anything to do with him. It was a while until the Americans welcomed him back for another visit. Dickens was aware of this, though, as well. In the preface to something like Martin Chuzzlewit, he says something like, "I know that the Americans have a good enough sense of humor to take this the way they should and to accept, objective criticism. It's one thing to have an Englishman criticize the English, but if you're a foreigner criticizing Americans, that still doesn't work very well."
No.
What negative portrait of Americans did Dickens paint? How did Americans feel about Dickens' comedy? How did the British feel about Dickens' comedy? Oh, America, to Britain you'll always be the colonies.